So, I've made a video before discussing some fairy tale inspirations for RWBY characters, and it was fun, even with all the comments I got saying that iink couldn't be based on King Midas because there was a character based on King Midas in one of the books. And all those people being blatantly wrong because literally everything about the character in question makes it obvious that they're based on Rumpelstiltskin, including their name being fucking Xanth Rumpel. But yeah, so I decided to sort of do a similar video again, but this time it's gonna be different in a couple of ways. First, I'm gonna be more explicit when talking about what are canonical proven inspirations versus theories, because last time some people didn't seem to understand when I was just giving you facts. You don't need to argue with me on what you think Crow's fairy tale is, I'm telling you what it is. The second way this video is gonna be a bit different is that I guess today I woke up and chose violence. I want to talk about fairy tale inspirations that I think are weak, boring, or just not done well today. So how about we start off strong with perhaps the dumbest one in the whole show, Watts. This is one of the ones where I'm giving you canon information straight from the horse's mouth. The official companion book revealed what Watts' fairy tale reference is, and it is Arthur Watts alludes to John Watson from Sherlock Holmes if he had connected with James Moriarty instead of Sherlock Holmes. So that might be the stupidest collection of words I've ever heard. First, it's stupid because it's such a childish, roundabout way of saying if he was evil. Like, there's nothing remotely related to Moriarty with Watts. That idea also implies that Dr. Watson is just a sponge who soaks up the personality of whoever he hangs out with, which is double stupid. But moreover, there's just nothing Dr. John Watson about Watts. Watts and Watson are similar sounding names. Watts apparently gets his first name from Sherlock's author, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, even though no other RWBY characters allude to their author specifically. And yeah, I guess they're both doctors, but Watson was like a medical doctor. Watts just has a doctorate, seemingly in robotics. Pietro's just as similar to John Watson in that regard. It's just, this is the weakest, flimsiest character illusion I've ever heard. It sounds like it has all the same amount of evidence as shit like, I think Neo is based on the Little Mermaid because she has legs. Nothing about Watts could lead a viewer to understanding his fairy tale origin on his own, without the writers having to tell you. Quite frankly, I thought Watts was referencing Dr. Frankenstein for the longest time. Watts' name and yellow coloring hint at electricity, which is connected to how Frankenstein brings his monster to life. Frankenstein is also a doctor. Well, actually, he dropped out of college, but no one really cares. And Watts is the one to rebuild Tyrion's tail, connecting him to a similar type of body modification job as Frankenstein had participated in. Robotics could be seen as the RWBY World version of Frankenstein's reanimation project, especially since Watts ends up playing a key role in Penny's story, which sees her become a real girl.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
And I'm not saying my headcanon is better than what the writers actually decided to go with, but the point is instead that I can at least see something resembling evidence to support my headcanon, in comparison to the literally nothing demonstrating Watts' actual allusion to Sherlock's sidekick. On the topic of insufficiently distributed evidence, let's look at our next character, Oscar. And by proxy, Ozma and Ozpin a little bit. So, I firmly believe that Oscar was originally planned as a reference for Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. He lives on a farm with his aunt, he has an inexplicably rainbow handkerchief, he leaves home to join a magical quest, he meets the Scarecrow first, his second outfit even gave him ruby-colored shoes. Also, yes, I know they were silver shoes in the book, the movie version is significantly more iconic and recognizable by a wider audience, being pedantic doesn't make you sound smart. But the problem is, in 2019, the After the Fall book was released and introduced the headmaster of Vacuo, Theodore. Theodore is explicitly referencing Dorothy in practically every way, which means Oscar couldn't be Dorothy anymore. So what is Oscar's fairy tale? Well, that's a tough question, because the wiki has an answer, but it has no sources, meaning I can't tell where the information's come from. And the wiki is no stranger to just stating headcanon like it's fact, but if they are to be believed, then Oscar is a reference to a character from the marvelous land of Oz called Tip. Tipitarius, better known as Tip, is an orphaned slave belonging to a witch. Within the story, Tip manages to befriend a jack-o'-lantern come to life, escapes the witch, follows an army of girls set out to overthrow the Scarecrow as he ruled the Emerald City, and then with the jack-o'-lantern and Scarecrow went to the Winky country to get the Tin Woodsman to help take over the Emerald City again from the army of girls. Tip is also revealed to be the enchanted Princess Ozma, the long-lost daughter of the late King Oz. So, elements of this idea does make sense. Tip being basically the same person as Princess Ozma makes for a good connection between Oscar and Ozma. The names might get confusing here. I'm gonna do my best to help make it clear with the visuals though. And Tip's journey to reclaim the Emerald City can see some parallels in Oscar's participation in helping Team RWBY's quest to save the day somehow. But there are some kinks here. Things like how Oscar's home life with his aunt bears significantly more resemblance to Dorothy's life on a farm with her Auntie M than it does to Tip's life as a slave to a witch. Also, there is a clear connection between Oscar and Ozma via Tip and Princess Ozma. Ozpin doesn't get the same level of connection to the late King Oz. Ozpin pretty clearly is referencing the Wizard, Oscar Zoroaster Phadrig Isaac Norman Henkel Emmanuel Ambrose Diggs, but that character doesn't get the same intimate connections to King Oz or Princess Ozma. Other than being able to do magic, he has no real connection to the two. I mean, like, in one of the books, the wizard participated in kidnapping Princess Ozma, but readers didn't like that, so L. Frank Baum quietly retconned that. But what I'm saying is that Oscar gets to be significantly more connected to Ozma than Ozpin does, which is pretty weird. There's also the fact that Tip is described as having brown-colored skin, which Oscar doesn't have. His white boy with a tan skin tone also seems more related to Dorothy than Tip. This apparent shift in fairy tale makes it feel like Miles and Carrie and whoever else is in charge of these sorts of decisions at Rooster Teeth don't actually have much of a grasp on the show they're producing. It feels like they were planning on Oscar being Dorothy, but then E.C. Myers made their own Dorothy character, and that meant RWBY had to scramble to give Oscar a new fairy tale. Are they truly that hands-off with their supplemental projects to not even notice a whole character sharing a reference as your new deuteragonist was created? Or had they simply done that poorly of a job properly demonstrating Oscar's inspiration in the beginning? Oscar's not the only one to suffer from poor planning, though. Quite frankly, Ambrosius is the worst when it comes to that. Writer Eddie Rivas has tweeted about this, revealing Ambrosius as a reference to Merlin the Wizard. Fucking how? Why? Is Merlin intrinsically connected to the concept of creation? I don't think he even makes, like, King Arthur's sword or armor or anything. What about Ambrosius is like Merlin at all, beyond a general idea that sometimes Merlin wore blue? If I'm being blunt, I don't think Ambrosius should have ever even existed. Jinn makes sense. Referencing the genie in the lamp with the 3 wishes changing to 3 questions was genuinely clever, even if they never had the Aladdin character interact with Jinn throughout her entire runtime. Seriously, Emerald should have gotten the final question. She should have asked if Cinder loved her back, and then learning she doesn't would explain Emerald's decision to switch to the good guy's side. Beyond all that, though, having more genie-esque characters in the other relics just doesn't make sense like how the lamp did, and in a way, hinders how clever Jinn's illusion was. I think the only reason they did decide to go forward with more big blue spirits is because I don't think they had any other ideas on how the rest of the relics could work. So they decide to make another Jinn-like character to act as the relic of creation, whose biggest contribution to the story is turning Penny into a real girl. So why make it Merlin? Merlin has no connection to Pinocchio, creation, or hell, anything here. Merlin was a prophet. Ambrosius creates long-distance travel. I guess the big question I'm coming down to here is, why make Ambrosius Merlin when the Blue Fairy is the much better choice? You know, the Blue Fairy, Wish Upon a Star, Disney's fucking theme tune? The Blue Fairy is the one who not only brings the puppet Pinocchio to life, but later turns him into a real boy. She's just a much better option for Ambrosius to reference. Oh, but I can hear you now. They already have a Blue Fairy character in RWBY. It's CL. And you're right. With her primarily blue color palette and the star symbol on her forehead, Penny's teammate makes sense as the Blue Fairy. Here's the thing though, Oscar already proves that they're willing to change fairy tales around. Ciel could easily be classified as referencing the wishing star instead, allowing the blue fairy inspiration to take form in a much more relevant place in the story, because also, Ciel isn't important. I wish she was. The fact that Ciel isn't seen at all during Volume 7 and 8 are a downright crime, but because the directors decided to forget about her almost as swiftly as they forgot about Pietro and Maria, there's no reason to waste the Blue Fairy reference on a character with about 5 minutes of screen time. If Ciel isn't actually going to be in this show, let the Blue Fairy be the one to make Penny a real girl instead. Because otherwise we get the Dumbo idea of, we'll just make Ambrosius based on a character with literally nothing to do with the characters he interacts with, or the concept he represents. But you know what? It may be an ill-thought-out fairy tale, but at least Ambrosius has one, unlike the final handful of people we'll be looking at today. It makes sense that background characters, intended to only have one scene and maybe a line of dialogue, to have no real fairy tale origin. Sometimes they do, but often they don't, and that's okay. You know where it's not okay to just not have a fairy tale reference for a character? When they're one of your main character's family. Winter, Whitley, and Willow just have no fairy tale origin, at least none that have been confirmed as canon by RT, the same group of writers and directors that fucking love confirming things on Cameo and Twitter and shit. Jacques gets a fairy tale. He's Jack Frost. Hell, Weiss's grandpa that you wouldn't know anything about unless you watched One World of Remnant from 2016 gets a fairy tale. He's Santa. But Weiss's little brother, who plays a role in pushing Weiss to escape in Volume 4, and later helps save Penny in Volume 8? Nothing. Weiss's alcoholic mother, who tells Weiss all the info she needs to arrest Jacques and helps kill the Hound? Nothing. Weiss's big sister, who has been a role model for Weiss and is the one who taught her how to summon and who played a major role in the Atlas arc and is now the Winter Maiden? Nothing. You could make some guesses. You could say Willow is Mrs. Claus and Winter's the Snow Queen and Whitley's, I don't know, Twink Jack Frost, but really they clearly weren't made with any sort of reference in mind. It's just Weiss as a boy. Weiss but older. Weiss but even older. Nothing about these three hints at any sort of inspiration for them. Even the wiki can't bullshit ideas, and this is the same website that says Oobleck instructing Blake to detach the train car with the bomb on it is a reference to Red vs. Blue. And that's kind of the thing. This is the point in the script where I would want to list out my theories and explain why I'm super smart and cool, but I can't because there's nothing to work with here. I can't look at their names and color palettes for a connection like how I could with Watts. I can't examine what similarities they have to fairy tales like how I could with Oscar on his farm. I can't speculate on how they interact with other characters in significant ways like how I could with Ambrosius. They are nothing. Which is also the amount of effort or care that apparently went into their creation on a writing and directing standpoint. Nothing. Also, can I just say how that's so weird? All the other Team RWBY family members have fairy tale origins. Well, except for Ty, but I could at least make a theory for him. Raven, the Belladonnas, some of Weiss's family, they all get one. Willow, Whitley, and especially Winter play important roles in the story, far more than any other family member barring maybe Raven. They've gotten the most screen time, the most development. Clearly the writers have thought about the Schnees and Atlas a lot. Fuck, it seems to be the only location on Remnant they've ever really cared to think about. So it's weird that they just don't have a fairy tale reference in a show where that's the whole fucking point. You made sure to source out a story for Dee and Dudley to reference, but couldn't be bothered for the new Winter Maiden? I mean, isn't this the whole point of having a show based on fairy tales? To adapt them into your world and have fun seeing how the different stories could interact? Shrek got this right. Ever After High got this right. Hell, Hoodwinked even got this right. By all means, it seems RT doesn't even care about their theme of fairy tales. We've yet to see a Mama Bear or Papa Bear for Goldilocks to interact with. Have RWBY fight Beowulfs all you want. The really interesting idea would be to give her an actual big bad wolf character to fight. They used to incorporate references to the stories these characters are based on. Cinder finishes her infiltration at midnight like Cinderella at her ball. Sun's semblance is a direct translation of an ability Sun Wukong can do. The Scarecrow can't walk straight because he's drunk. Pinocchio's a robot. Joan of Arc has to deal with the Cardinal of Winchester. These are clever and fun explorations on adapting the tales these characters hail from, but nowadays it's much more lazy feeling. Either they will just fully copy a story without any real changes, or they'll simply name a character after a fairy tale and that's it. I guess I just wish the writers cared more about incorporating the actual fairy tales into the show again. I want to see Harriet have to race someone. I want Weiss to have some altercation including poison and/or an apple. I want the Tin Man to obtain his heart. I want Little Miss Muffet to have more than just a spider tattoo. Give her like a pet spider or something. If they do any illusions, it never really goes beyond a surface level. Robin is stealing from the rich to give to the poor, technically, but we never actually see her give it to the poor, or the good her deeds are doing. Change her name and the Robin Hood reference would be completely lost on someone. She'd just be a vague thief. Lionheart is a coward, and that's it. No nuance to the idea, nothing to incorporate the other elements of the Cowardly Lion. His character starts and ends with coward, and that's all he is. Tyrion's based on the scorpion and the frog, and all they've done for that is make him a scorpion faunus. Where is the creativity? How is Doc the best use of a fairy tale reference the show's had since Volume 3? But I think I've ranted about this long enough. I like RWBY's fairy tale idea, but so often the concept falls totally flat. Trying to discern the references of each character used to be tons of fun, but nowadays it's either impossible to figure out without the creators tweeting about it, or there's no nuance to decipher or explore, and all too often the references range from flimsy to non-existent. The writers may not care about exploring the main concept of the show, but I can at least hope that they might start giving a shit again sometime in the future.
I'm here to save you.
But I love the beast!
Didn't he kidnap your father?
Yes, but...
And blackmailed you?
Yeah.
Imprisoned you in a castle?
You're right, let's go.
Okay.
Once there was an ugly barnacle. He was so ugly that everyone died. The end.